2020 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission, and pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This public meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but the public can access this meeting while in progress by Zoom video communications. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by telephone, cell phone, or personal computer using Zoom. And as always, we will start with a roll call. I am Brian Barabee.
I'm Bill Payne.
Emily Winter.
I'm Rebecca Longwell.
All right. So first up this evening, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing for a notice, continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, to continue the hearing for a notice of intent for Century Mill Road, Map 3.D, Parcel 75, proposed construction of 3 single-family homes, and to widen and pave the existing gravel driveway. Do we have someone here representing the applicant tonight?
Yeah, Scott Goddard's here.
Scott Goddard, and I believe Kyle is here as well.
And possibly Scott Hayes from Foresight Engineering, the civil engineer. I think he was trying to call in. I'm not sure if he's in the meeting yet or not.
Let me see. Yes. All right. I am just going to pull up the set of plans. So I do apologize. Typically we connect remotely, but there is an issue. So I am pulling things from the town website. So if it is not the most up-to-date, I do apologize, but I believe it is. I do know Kyle sent me a colored version, which I was going to leave up to the chair to display or not. And unfortunately, that question just was changed because of the circumstance. So, please provide a summary of what you submitted recently.
Yeah, I did, Rebecca. The plan that you're referring to was just simply a colored exhibit for easier presentation purposes of this plan that you're showing. Sometimes with all the black and white lines, it can get a little busy. If you're able to display the graphic for display purposes, I think it might be a little easier for presentation purposes. It wasn't given as intended to be new information. I'll leave that to you.
What I was just saying is I'm trying to pull it up, but in the meantime, this is what I have. So please go off of this.
Okay, I got you. All right, so Scott Goddard, Goddard Consulting, Wetlands Consultant, representing 21 Century Mill Road, LLC. And if he's on, Scott Hayes, Foresight Engineering, is the civil engineer, site designer for the project as well. At the last meeting, we responded to a number of comments and questions that arose during the public hearing process. What was discussed largely at the meeting a couple of weeks ago was a question in response to a DEP comment, was namely, were any of the depressional areas on site qualifying as isolated land subject to flooding? Scott Hayes from Foresight Engineering did submit drainage calculations with supporting documentation to show that any small ponding area is substantially less than the requisite volume for isolated land subject to flooding under the Wetland Protection Act. There's more strict definition of that resource area under the Bolton bylaw. He submitted calculations also supporting that in a 100-year storm, that the requisite volume was not satisfied with that as well. At the meeting, which was immediately following a couple of storm events that we had a couple of back-to-back storm events that were in excess of 1 inch, with the most recent one being 1.7 inches, and then some photographs submitted. So those were presented to us just at the meeting, so we hadn't had a chance to sort of assess them. And to be kind of fair to the process, we took the time to then recon the site in response to the storm event that occurred and the direct observation of the water to figure out where the photographs were taken. In addition to identifying the photo locations, Scott Hayes with sort of assessed the measurements of area and volume of the puddled areas and use that to help sort of balance out his model to verify the veracity of the model. So Rebecca, are you able to display back the site plan? Because at least in what I'm looking at on my screen, I only see the faces of everybody. Is there a?
Yep.
Okay. And Scott Hayes, are you in the meeting? I see his name on the thing. I just can't tell if he's able to speak in the meeting or not.
He just entered into the meeting again. He left. Let me see.
I'm here.
There
Oh,
you go.
okay. There you go.
I'm here briefly. I have another hearing. I'm kind of juggling here, so.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'll just show you on this plan where those photos were taken. And then Scott can explain the adjustments that he made based on direct field observation. So I guess my pointer doesn't show right on your display. If I move my
No.
point, yeah, you can't see that. Okay. So if you go up the driveway about to the center of the dark area, right there. Yep. And you go just north, just up right there. So that area is inside the floodplain. So it's mapped as floodplain areas that we expect to get puddles during storm events. That was the exact location of one of those photos. So seeing some small puddling there is not a surprise. It's exactly what was anticipated and calculated. So that's consistent with the direct field observations. On the other side of the driveway, if you go down, Rebecca, yep, that's the high spot. So just go to the left of that. Yep, right in there. That is the second picture that was submitted. Again, in the floodplain in an area that has some small depressional areas that do flood with puddles during rain events. Then, so those two pictures, they don't concern me at all. It's exactly what we would expect, and no work is proposed within those areas. All floodplain storage on the site is being preserved intact. And as a reminder, we did add 2 areas per the request of the commission to even add additional flood storage on the site. Yep, those 2 locations to move them further away from the pond and stream across the street. This is another location where we can add substantial flood storage volume on site. There were 2 other pictures, one on lot 2 and one on lot 3 within the kind of excavated depression areas. One of the pictures was taken at the very southern tip of the lot 2 depression. If you can move your cursor, Rebecca, to, I don't see where your cursor is. Down to the left, down, right there. So there was an area there of just a couple hundred square feet and just a few inches of water. It was measured in the field, well under the volume required under the bylaw. The picture was just deceiving because it was kind of like a close-up shot of water, but didn't actually show how much was there. So we demonstrated that that was well under the requirements for isolated land subject to flooding under the bylaw, and it did match with the model that we presented, extrapolating to the 100-year quite well. Likewise, on lot 3, there was another small puddled area in an isolated depression of only a few hundred square feet and only a few inches. That was also measured in the field, depth, areas, all of it carefully measured and then calibrated to the model. So I think if Scott is on the call, if we can unmute him, I think it would be helpful if he could summarize what he did for his calculations to demonstrate that the area does not qualify as isolated land subject to flooding. Are you on, Scott? I see you're, okay, there you are. Are you able to sort of speak to your calculations?
Yeah, so we evaluated the areas, the area in lot 2, especially, looks like it was probably a borrow pit. I mean, it looks like it was previously excavated, not a natural kind of formation. But The area itself is it's very flat. It doesn't have a large watershed area to it at all. It's very close to the periphery of the depression itself. With respect to the topography in there, it's very flat. I mean, there are a few areas at the I guess at the kind of southern end of the depression in Lot 2, slightly lower than the rest of it by 2 or 3/10 of a foot. Two, which is 3, 4, 5 inches. So the area is flat and kind of undulating, and the lower areas are going to pool water before it kind of fills up to 3 or 4 inches, and then it gets dispersed over a much larger area from the elevation of 310, which is the floodplain elevation, even though it's not connected to the floodway. It only drops down to about 309.3, and it's mostly about 309.5 throughout. It's a fairly large area, probably close to 20,000 square feet. So, you start taking that small watershed and dispersing it over a large flat area. You're just not going to get a large level of ponding in there. You're going to collect some puddles. So there'll be some sort of micro or maybe independent depressions within the depression. If we're looking at the topography at a micro level at say a 1/10 of a foot contour, you kind of pick up those little pockets of low areas. But when those fill and breach the area, the amount of the volume of water that gets dispersed is over a very large area. So, in meeting the 1,000 square feet with an average depth of 6 inches, there's just not enough watershed area there, given the extent of the size of the depression to fill it up so that it would have an average depth of that with that area. I just don't see that happening. So that's really all I have to say. I mean,
There's the other one too, Scott, right? The Lot 3.
Oh, yeah. Similarly, the one on Lot 3 isn't as large, but there's areas that are slightly, by a few tenths of a feet lower in elevation. So those areas pool first and collect water. But again, by the time it fills up to 2, 3, 4 inches, it's breaching to the much larger overall area of the depression. So it just there isn't the watershed size or groundwater contribution to the areas to fill these any substantial amount of water, even on a 100-year storm.
So I think where that puts us then on the project in terms of resource area impacts, there's 3 houses proposed and the improvement of the existing driveway. None of the 3 houses are within a resource area or within 100 feet of a resource area. All the structures are outside of floodplain, and all structures are outside of the buffer zones per the request of the commission, particularly on Lot 3, where it was requested to pull the house forward from a previous version of this plan. That was done. The only work that regards grading near a floodplain is mitigation work that's not necessary, because you only really need to do mitigation when you're filling floodplain. There's 0 filling a floodplain proposed on this project, but there are 2 areas that are conceptually shown on a plan that could be used as mitigation. If the commission saw fit that they would like to have additional flood storage on site, we show where that can be possible as a mitigating measure. There's really just minor work in the buffer zone for lots 2 and lots 4 to relocate a shed that's straddling a lot line in the outer part of the buffer zone. And then there's a de minimis amount of work for some minor grading around the septic system on Lot 4 and on Lot 3 and Lot 4 to install the wells, but with no grade changes. Other than that, the driveway work itself, Scott Hayes had also submitted a report showing the improvements to the stormwater management on the site to convert the compacted driveway into a rechargeable surface where it allows water to go through the surface into a subsurface base, some subsurface recharge underneath the asphalt. It's like a pervious asphalt material that would increase the permeability over existing conditions and therefore improving the runoff conditions from over existing conditions. So, we believe this project is a net improvement from a stormwater perspective, certainly from a flood storage perspective, and the work in total in the resource areas has been kept to an absolute minimum, really only minor grading with none of the house structures. So that's really brings us back to, that's the answers to the questions that arose at the last meeting with respect to isolated land subject to flooding.
Brian, I believe Bill may have a comment. I see he's unmuted himself.
Bill Payne,
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Rebecca, can you show the slides that I sent you?
I'm going to try to, again, unfortunately, I don't have remote access to my desktop right now. I'm not sure what's going on, but if you would like to start providing your comment, I can attempt to pull that up at the same time.
And do that because there's some photos in there I'd like to share. But basically, I have a lot of questions regarding the analysis that was done and some of the results. So on I looked up the weather report for Worcester Airport December 1st for the previous day, November 30th. And precipitation was 2.38 inches. I know it's Worcester, it's not Bolton, but it's close enough. That was the 17-hour rain event per the note that Scott sent out. A 1-year rain event is 2.64 inches. 100-year rain event is 7 inches. And what we're talking about, a rain event was somewhere between 1.7 and 2.3 inches. I question the results of the foresight report summary. First of all, for the 1 year in Depression A and Depression B, 2.64 inches, 24-hour rainfall. It shows a peak depth of 0 inches, average depth of 0 inches for both depressions. If we did measure, or we did see water in there, and you guys did measure a depth of at least 8 inches, that's greater than 0. You're going from an extreme of 0 to an infinite. We obviously have water there. So there must be something greater than a zero inch peak or average depth. 100-year, we didn't come close to that, so I can't really comment on that. There was a couple of pictures also that were shown for Depression A. One was taken from the 30 November storm event, I think on December 1st, and the other was taken on December 4th. And if you take a look at those and look at some of the structures that are on the side of the Depression A ponding, you can see the water has dropped by, I don't know, maybe a foot, maybe 15 inches, something like that. So what I'm getting at now is the overall size of what that ponding is. Your estimate for Depression B was 853 square feet, something less than 1,000 square feet that is required by the Bolton bylaw. If I do some simple calculations of the area that you have, the 853, come up with a radius for that to 16.5 feet. If I'm looking at a circle, the area of a circle, which is an assumption, a simplification at this point, the radius would need to increase to get to the 1,000 square foot would only be 17.8 feet, which is about, a foot and 3 inches. But by taking a look at the pictures, the water level had dropped by at least that amount or something very close to it. So that ponding area should be something, what you measured was 8 inches. You'd have to get to 9 inches for the 2/3 of the max to be close to what your average is. And it looks like you might be close to 1,000 square feet there also. So I kind of question the analysis that was done. First of all, on the 1 year rain event, there was something obviously greater than 0 inches peak and average. And I question the overall size of that, whether it's 853, 3 or 4 days after the rain event versus, 1,000 foot during the rain event.
Yeah, I can sort of address that a little bit. I think Scott Hayes, he just texted me that he's trying to get back in to the meeting. So a couple things going on there. One is the calculations have to combine two different things: surface water runoff. There it is. Surface water runoff and groundwater contributions. So the groundwater contributions are best seen by direct observation. These areas we've been monitoring for a number of years, and we have a pretty good handle as to where water does and does not come. This has been going on for some time. So what you're seeing is, since this is a gravelly material, is a groundwater contribution coupled with whatever small amount of runoff is created. This is very, very coarse material in a very, very small watershed. So by its nature, you're not going to see much, if at all, direct runoff. You don't see water running off of small basins, even with large amounts of rain, into surface, because the water soaks into the ground and surcharges the groundwater. So and plus you get variability depending on the time of year and whether there's frozen ground conditions, leaf off conditions. There's a number of variables that go into these models, but we have direct observation, which is an excellent indicator that helps sort of calibrate these models to show that what we're measuring here and what we're estimating based on further extrapolated calculations makes a lot of sense on the ground as to the numbers. And it's like the numbers don't lie. What we measure on the ground is real. What we observe is real. What we can see from rain events is real. And then the numbers that come in the models are extrapolations based on real data. And so what Scott was saying earlier is,
if we go back to the data that was presented for a 1-year rain event, what is meant by peak depth of 0 inches and average depth of 0 inches? When we did observe something that had a peak depth of 8 inches and flooding over 850, or at least ponding over 853 square feet.
I think Scott might be on the phone, but I think if he's on the phone, he can chime up. But I think what that's referring to there is the runoff depth. So you may have no runoff created on a very small rain event, which is direct surface running off of the water as it hits the ground. So the ground saturates, some water goes in the ground, other goes off the surface. The more of an impervious surface that you have, right? So think about a parking lot. Water doesn't go in the ground through a parking lot, so it all runs off. But you think of something that's a very coarse gravel material, like a beachy kind of sand, that not much water runs off at all. It mostly all soaks into the ground. So when you have a small watershed and a highly coarse material, like we have in this case, you're not going to see much runoff at all until you get to very high events, because there's just so much capacity of the ground to take that water, that very small amount of water that's coming. So if you had a huge watershed and you have less permeability, well, it changes things. But since these are dug holes in the ground, there's very little surface area of landing where the water lands on the ground. There's very little places where that contributes to these spots, because we're surrounded on all sides in effect by wetlands, bigger natural wetland systems, which is where the water is going to naturally want to run to. So that's why you're seeing no runoff volume created. And we get the opportunity to see, groundwater contributions and kind of balance it all together. But what we did not see is 1,000 square feet, 6-inch average depth in those areas, because what happens is, like Scott Hayes was pointing out, the areas are there's such big, large, flat areas that to get 6-inch average depth over that area would just be a tremendous amount of water, the kind of water that, would be, impractical or unfeasible to even see there. And we've watched this now over the course of several years and never seen anything even close to that. So
by your own measurements, so you had 853 square feet, which is pretty close to 1,000 square feet. If that radius had grown only by a foot in 3 inches, you're at 1,000 square feet. And if you look at the pictures, it looked as though the ponding had dropped by probably something close to a foot anyways. And your max measured depth was at 8 inches. And in the original foresight analysis, he quoted, his average depth is 2/3 the max. You're awfully close to the 6-inch level right there too. And that measurement was made 2 days and something like 10 hours after the rain event had stopped.
Yeah, no,
I'm questioning the analysis. I really question
no,
this.
I understand that. And look, this area, we've watched this area over and over and over again. And the air level at which the water goes does not fluctuate by those depths that you're mentioning. It's fairly consistent. I've looked at this site from, dozens and dozens of days, if not 100 days, over the last, I don't know, 3 years or something. So
You're saying you can look at this and tell the difference between 850 square feet and 1,000 square feet?
Well, I'm having a hard time knowing what this
contour
is.
that you guys had drawn for.
We can look at direct measurements and see where water is and was. It's a measurable event.
So Bill, it sounds like you may want a peer review of this, the 2 isolated areas in particular. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that would be fair.
Okay. Brian, I don't know if you want to discuss. I know we have a few other items on the agenda this
Well,
evening.
as I say, for time reasons, I think that's probably where I would land. I had a lot of questions similar to what Bill brought up. And again, what I've seen out on site too. I've been on that site a number of times over the past few years. And when I see this peak 6, average depth 4 inches, I've seen it higher than 6, and again, just my estimation. I know it's the neighbor's estimation and my estimation, but I was there. I've been on that site a number of times and I've seen significant ponding in those depressions. And again, I don't know if we can ever get clarification on this one, but it's just become a pet peeve of mine. We keep mentioning all these areas that aren't natural, that it looked like it was a borrow pit at one point in time, which I can agree with. It probably was. But again, how many decades and years does something have to naturalize before it's not natural? It's a natural part of what's in the topography of that area. It's been there longer than I have any idea. At what point in time do we get to stop saying, well, it's not natural? It kind of is natural.
One point too, just to add, and I want to interject just because it's right on line with what you're saying.
Please.
It looks like a borrow pit. Again, it may have been, but we know in 2016, it was excavated without permits, which is still also an item that needs to be discussed. But I think the commission is leading towards a peer review, which would help shed some light on that. However, to your point, Brian, it was mentioned this evening that, it does look like a borrow pit. It was excavated fairly recently, so it very well should look like a borrow pit.
Right. It's a very fair point. And the other thing I was looking at, which kind of goes to that too, is I was looking in your very detailed answers to our questions, which was great. Talking about the ANRAD that's in place, because look, it's a very wet area. That's why I say I've been out there a lot. It doesn't often pass the sniff test when you're told that this is not going to impact the wetlands significantly. That ANRAD that was passed, that gets mentioned here, saying that we agreed to an ANRAD. What consulting firm did the work for that ANRAD?
It was Goddard Consulting.
All right. And did they let us know at the time that they had a financial investment in this property, which would have triggered us to do a peer review of the ANRAD?
No.
All right. So honestly, I think we were knowingly giving incomplete information at the time that that ANRAD was issued. We rely on the credentials of the people doing this work. According to the credentials of the people that did it, they need to let us know in advance if they have a significant financial stake, at which point in time, historically, we would call for a third-party review, which we didn't do because we were never told. I'd like to see a third-party review of these 2 isolated areas subject to flooding, but the entire initial ANRAD, I think that has to be done by an outside third party. I don't trust how things are drawn on there. It was discussed a ton tonight, how flat it is. It's flat, it's flat, it's flat. This flat area over here is floodplain. This flat area isn't. This area will flood this way. It's flat. It's all gonna flood. Most of it contains water. If there's none of the houses are located in any floodplain, again, that does not pass the sniff test with what was marked out in the field and what I can see is the topography when I'm out there.
So
That's
if
just
I
a
could-
lot
if
of
I
my
could
initial
speak to that,
thoughts, looking
Mr.
back at
Chairman,
your
just,
questions.
you know,
That's kind of the area, the way I would go is to request a new ANRAD to actually delineate the area out there. And the third party review of those two areas subject to flooding.
if I could speak to that just briefly, the ANRAD that was done,
Yeah.
you know, is still binding upon all parties. I've walked it many times. I'm a professional in this industry. I remember going back to that. I remember at the very least it was walked with Rebecca. This is digging back into the memory banks here, but
Can I stop you for a second? Because we are short on
Yeah.
time here. Is anything I said incorrect? Did the person doing it inform us, as they have to do according to their credentials and what they said, the professional organizations they were part of, did they inform us that they had a financial stake in this? And the answer is quite clearly no. No, they did not. And did they know at the time that they were kind of fudging around with providing us full and accurate information? I can't make that judgment, but it certainly looks like they knowingly neglected to provide us with that information, which is, you know, obviously we will question the ANRAD if we know you have a big financial stake in it. If we think you're an independent wetland biologist, we'll give it more leeway. I really think we need to redo that ANRAD. And Rebecca, if you have a chance, I'd be curious what town council has to say. I mean, Scott may very well be right that once we sign off on it, it's signed in gold. But you know, if we were knowingly given incorrect information, do we have a case to challenge that ANRAD?
I mean,
We can check with council after the meeting. I can reach out to them. However, I think at the very least, I think the commission, which is not included on the current ORAD that was issued, is to have a peer review if the commission would like to vote this evening, with the fact that the chair has asked that I reach out to council about a secondary portion of it. At the very least this evening, vote to have a peer review of those isolated areas. The depressional areas, excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll call that roll call vote in a second. Scott, are you okay with us continuing for the time being until next meeting?
yeah, no, I think that makes sense. You
Okay.
know, and you know, look, I can't remember all the little details of what was said and what not said during prior public hearings for the ANRAD. I do know that it went through a fair public hearing process. The plan was produced by
Again,
a
we
civil
were not
engineer.
we were not given the full information of what was going on there, and we're not going to argue this out right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, quit trying to twist that.
floodplain location.
Everything I said stands. Thank you. All right, so I'd like to make a motion that we have a roll call vote, that we vote to see if the commission will ask for a third-party review of the two areas of isolated land subject to flooding located at Century Mill Road, map 3.D, parcel 75. All those in favor, please respond with aye, and we'll do it via roll call. I'll start with Bill Payne.
Aye.
Emily Winter.
Aye.
All right, and I'm an aye as well. Now I'd like to, Rebecca, if you could remind me our next meeting date
Is January 5th.
and our first open time.
Is 7:30.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public meeting for a notice of intent for Century Mill Road, map 3.D, parcel 75 until our next public meeting, January 5th, 2021, at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Bill,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well.
Thank you. And Scott, if you could just provide an email so I have it in writing that you have requested a continuation along with the meeting minutes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca. For the ANRAD, do we need to open that as a public hearing, or is that
Yes.
simply a discussion?
You need to open it as a public hearing.
Okay. So the Bolton Conservation Commission, hold on one second. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a public hearing for a public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, a public hearing for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 460 Main Street, map 3.D, parcel 75. Is there an applicant or somebody here to discuss this evening?
Yes, Nicole Hayes is here, I believe, to represent the applicant, and I'm not seeing the applicant right at this moment. But so Nicole, if you want to provide a summary, and I will pull up the plans.
Sure. My name is Nicole Hayes. I'm a professional wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting, here with the applicant for an ANRAD to confirm the wetland resources on the site at 460 Main Street. The wetland resources on site are bordering vegetated wetland. And I'm not sure if the agent has been out on the site or if the commission has been out on the site, but we'd be willing to do a site walk to confirm the wetland resource boundaries.
Okay, that was going to be my first question. So I'm trying to think if I have any other initial questions, but this seems like the first step and most prudent step would be to get out there and take a look, especially if you haven't had a chance yet, Rebecca. Are there any other initial questions by members of the commission regarding this? No. Is there anybody here from the public tonight to comment on this? All right. That said, then, Rebecca, would you be willing to try to schedule a site walk?
I can certainly schedule a site walk. We're going to be getting about a foot of snow, it's looking like. I hate to admit it. So
Yeah.
I can't promise that it's going to be before our next meeting, but we can certainly try to schedule a site visit and hope that the snow melts quickly and that we don't get another storm between now and January.
Okay. Well, hoping there on a site visit and really take a look. Nicole, are you okay if we continue this until our next public meeting and after we've had a chance to go for a site visit?
Oh, yes. Can I
Please.
be part of that site visit?
Yes, you will be notified about the site. So I'll coordinate with you, Nicole, and the applicant in the event they want to be on site as well. It's their property, so they're always more than welcome, and you as the representative, but that's up to the applicant to say who can and cannot be on their property at certain times. So I will coordinate with you via email following this meeting as well.
Okay, great. Yes.
And
Yes.
if you can just provide, if you are comfortable continuing, please provide it in writing via email, and then so that we have it for the record as well.
And when
Thanks.
is the next hearing?
January 5th, and this would be, what did we say, the last one was at 7:30. So this one will most likely be 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I agree.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 460 Main Street, map 3.D, parcel 75, until our next Conservation Commission meeting, Tuesday, January 5th, 2021 at 8 o'clock p.m. Do I hear a second?
I second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Bill Payne,
Aye.
Emily Winter,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Excuse me. Right. Next up this evening, The Bolton Conservation Commission will now hear a notice of intent under the, under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, for notice of intent for Still River Road map and parcel 8.B lots 32 and 33, proposed Still River Commons, construction of 4 single-family dwellings, access driveway, and supporting infrastructure, subject to a comprehensive permit under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. Rebecca, do we have someone tonight representing the applicant?
Yes, I believe we have Seth Donahoe present representing the applicant, and I believe we have the applicant present as well. I believe that's, oh no, I think they have a few members of their team present as well. So Brian, if you would like to hand it over to Seth and his team, I think I can pull up the plans.
That would be fantastic, Seth. If you'd like to give us an update and let us know what you are, what we are looking for here.
Great. Good evening, commissioners. This is Seth Donahoe with Dillis and Roy Civil Design Group. With me tonight is Robert Pace, the applicant, and Mr. Pace's counsel, Adam Costa. We've submitted a notice of intent for the site that is at the northerly end of Still River Road. The northerly property line is actually the Harvard Town line. It's located on the easterly side of the road. It's a 6.6 acre site. Driving by it, you can see much of the upland area is maintained as a field area. The site is currently identified as the Town of Bolton Assessor's Maps, lots 8B, 32, and 33. It is a field area and it's surrounded by wooded areas and a bordering vegetated wetland. We have gone through an extensive permitting process over in excess of a 2-year period. During that time, we received comments from the commission. We've had the opportunity to meet on site on a couple of occasions with Rebecca and I believe some members of the commission. The site's also been subject to prior peer reviews as part of the comprehensive permit process. The site in 2018 entered into the comprehensive permit process. At that time, it was proposed to be an 8-unit single-family dwellings. And that permitting effort resulted in an appeal and a settlement was reached between the applicant and the town where the development was reduced to only 4 units with increased setbacks to wetland resource areas. Throughout that process, we received many comments whenever we could. We tried to be sensitive to them and incorporate those in the overall design. And that's what you're looking at today before you, the 4-unit development. The site is located within NHESP habitat, and we've successfully completed permitting with NHESP. Their approval letter has been included with your notice of intent application. As a result of that and the settlement agreements, it was decided to permanently protect 5.58 acres of the property. So over 83% of the property will be permanently protected. Your site plans are representing the approximately 1 acre footprint of the project. There's a much bigger area behind and to the north of the project that will be permanently protected. Recently, the Bolton Board of Health also approved the septic system associated with the project. So the permitting under the Wetlands Protection Act is what we're here for you tonight. And the comprehensive permit, and Attorney Costa can chime in if he feels necessary. The comprehensive permit actually serves as a permit under all local bylaws, including the local wetland bylaw. So we're seeking a permit only under the Wetlands Protection Act at this time. The site layout that you are looking at is exactly as what is approved on the comprehensive permit plan and the comprehensive permit. The comprehensive permit itself has been recorded at the Worcester Registry of Deeds. Throughout the project, the site will be surrounded by a line of silt fence and straw bales, so the area will be demarcated during construction. The final sheet of your plan set, that sheet 6, is a specific project site erosion and sedimentation control plan, which it requires both temporary and permanent stabilization of areas, as well as defines the construction access to the site. The site does have upland access to Still River Road, and all alterations have been set up to avoid any alterations to bordering vegetated wetlands. If Attorney Costa has anything he'd like to add to my description, I'm happy to turn the floor over to him at this time.
Thank you, Seth and commissioners. I'll be brief because Seth has provided a comprehensive overview of what it is that we're submitting to the commission. I guess the only thing that I would add, and it's something he made reference to, and I suspect that all of you commissioners are somewhat aware of it because you've likely experienced the Chapter 40B process before. But this is one of the unique attributes of development under the comprehensive permit law, where an application is made to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a project in lieu of separate applications under local bylaws, rules, regulations, policies. And so we made our application to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We did that a couple of years ago. That sought a comprehensive permit that incorporated local permits from, for example, Conservation Commission under your local wetlands bylaw, Board of Health under local Title V regulations. And so we obtained that comprehensive permit. Initially, it was denied, as Seth had made reference to. We made substantial project modifications, and we ultimately negotiated a settlement with the town, reducing the size of the project. And so much of the review of wetlands, for example, occurred during the comprehensive permit project. We were obligated to, in order to satisfy the Zoning Board of Appeals, in order to allow the Zoning Board of Appeals to act on certain waiver requests we made with respect to the local wetlands bylaw, and to do so in an informed manner. The ZBA indicated that it wanted a peer review of those wetlands, wanted a peer review of the environmental attributes of the site. So we didn't have one or two or three, we had 4 separate rounds of review by Horsley Witten Group, starting in October of 2018 and carrying over into early to mid 2019 during the permitting process, focused on stormwater and wetlands, and addressing comments, concerns that we then attempted to modify the project to comply with. So despite all of that, and despite having the comprehensive permit in hand, we are back before the commission because what you can't do under Chapter 40B is you can't waive state requirements. So the Wetlands Protection Act, of course, is a state law. The Zoning Board of Appeals has no jurisdiction over that state law, even under Chapter 40B. And so we're before you, even though we've spent, it feels like meeting after meeting talking about wetlands issues with the zoning board, we're before you because we require an order of conditions under the state act as well. And that's something that the ZBA couldn't do. So with that, I'll turn it back to Seth if he has anything additional to add.
Real briefly, one of the things we show that we achieve in filing under the Wetlands Protection Act is protection of the 8 interests of the Wetlands Protection Act. So we've provided a summary of those in your notice of intent application. And one of the ones that comes to mind is the protection of rare wildlife, as that's something that's been echoed throughout the process. NHESP's approval of the project is incorporated in our application. There's a copy in that package. And their letter specifically says that their approval does meet the consistency requirements for protection under that interest of the act. So an order of conditions would not undermine that. So that's gone through extensive review with that separate state agency. And we feel we've accommodated them very well through the protections of a substantial portion of the property. With that, if the commission has any specific questions related to either the plans that are before you or anything that I've said tonight, I'd be happy to address them.
Okay, thank you, Seth. I'll ask, any of the commission members have initial thoughts, questions? Just a few things, Seth. First of all, I know there's a current order of conditions already existing for this site for a single family home. Normally speaking, I'm not sure, council might know better what the order we need to do this in, but just in order to keep it clean, I think in the past, we like to see that original order of conditions closed out before a new one is issued. The two may be able to run concurrent, but I think the initial one has to be closed before the new one can ever be closed as well. Not sure if you know offhand, but I do think that one's still outstanding. Am I correct, Rebecca?
Muted, sorry. But yes, that one is still outstanding and you are correct with that statement.
All right,
Mr. Chair, can I attempt to address that?
please.
So we are aware of that. In fact, I've discussed it with my client as well. So as you can appreciate, from my perspective as counsel and from my client's perspective as the holder of another order of conditions, we'd never want to relinquish or give up a right that we've got without knowing that we have a subsequent right to do something different. It's not my client's current intent to build a single family home. We've been through, as we just described, a very lengthy and a very costly process to obtain a comprehensive permit to build the 4 homes that you see here on your screen. So this is the intended project. Certainly we would expect and would accept any sort of a proviso or condition of approval that would require us to relinquish the existing order of conditions before commencing work, for example, under any new order of conditions. We wouldn't expect to benefit, nor would it make any sense, quite frankly, to have 2 conflicting orders of conditions for 2 different projects on the same site when only one project can be built. We would just be uncomfortable relinquishing an order of conditions that we now have in hand while there's still a process underway, not knowing if we're going to obtain a new one.
No, that makes sense. I think that answers my question too. Rebecca, do you have any initial thoughts on this?
I do. I have a few. My first, though, is, of course, the point of bringing that up is we just want, obviously, the applicant and their team to be aware of it so that we're not getting down to the point after a public hearing to say, okay, we're ready to issue a decision, but then we can't, and we're at a standstill because of that. But it sounds like the applicant is aware of that and is still willing to hold both open until that time when one needs to be closed out. Is that correct?
So through you, Mr. Chairman. So I think it's correct, but I don't want to get lost in the weeds here, but I want to be sure that the response I'm giving is nuanced enough to address the concern. So I wouldn't want to relinquish the order of conditions we have in hand minutes before you're going to vote on a new order of conditions, because even once you issue a new order of conditions, there's an appeal period that ensues. And so I want to give up a right that my clients have. What would occur if there were to be an appeal of the order of conditions it issues and my client makes a determination then that fighting that appeal is just too costly? It's the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. And he's just going to proceed with the single family home for the project. So I think the timing is key here. Again, not our desire here to complicate the record. We can only build one project on the site. We only need one order of conditions for one project, not 2 orders of conditions for 2 different projects. It's just a question of when we relinquish it. So I would suggest that the appropriate trigger would be, and I certainly welcome you to consult with town council in this regard if you think it appropriate, but I would suggest the appropriate trigger would be prior to work commencing under a new order of conditions on the presumption that one issues, we would somehow paper the trail, somehow document that we are relinquishing the old order of conditions. At that point, we'll know we have the new order, the appeal period would have passed, we'll have a building permit in hand, and we'll be prepared to commence site work.
Okay, no, I was say it answers my question, but as Rebecca was saying, we just want to make sure you're aware that will need to be cleaned up at some point, but I could completely understand the reason for holding on to both at this point. Rebecca, any other initial thoughts, questions?
Well, my initial thoughts about this, and I do appreciate the work that was done through the comprehensive permitting process regarding the stormwater review from Horsley and Witten with some comments and assessment by their wetland scientist as well, who's wonderful. But one item that is still outstanding that was mentioned in the Horsley and Witten comments, and I'm not going to nitpick that necessarily beyond this comment, is there's the perennial stream or intermittent stream as it is shown on these plans in my mind, still needs to be clarified. There were, with this notice of intent, which I appreciate, there were stream stats run at the location of the culvert regarding this information. However, during the drought, I noted it was running, it has a defined channel, it's going through, even with beaver activity, and I appreciate that Ecotech, that the applicant did hire Ecotech to go out. They provided their delineation forms, which I also appreciate, but stated that they were unable to locate the channel of the stream because of the beaver activity. And frankly, I think that's something that needs to be defined because it's an area on site that has not been defined yet and may very well impact the extent of and the capabilities of the project on the site. Additionally, Ecotech had, actually, this is rather a question for the applicant. What extent did Ecotech delineate the property? Did they reflag, or were they going along the extent of the entirety of the property? Because from my understanding, and I could have misunderstood, but I thought that they were just flagging the northern side of the property and the east of the property, not the southernmost side.
If I can address that to the commission, Ecotech did delineate all the resource areas adjacent to the project area. So it essentially surrounds the project area. What's represented on your plans are all of their flags, which are intended to supersede the flags previously approved by the commission. Ecotech did include their delineation report in there that references the flag numbers that you see on our plan. And specific to the stream question, the stream at the eastern edge of the property is mapped as an intermittent stream on the USGS map, and that's supported by the stream stats that are included in your application. To overcome that assessment as an intermittent stream, that stream would have to have a tributary watershed area in excess of 0.5 square miles. It does not meet that criteria. So that would make that an intermittent stream. There is a perennial stream, or a former perennial stream, north of the site. That's also mapped on the USGS map. That's essentially been obliterated by beaver flooding at this point. The bank is submerged. My last visit to the site, there was actually a beaver deceiver in the culvert going under Still River Road. On most cases, that area is inundated now, and there's no sign of a bank anymore. And noted in Ecotech's review is that in cases like this, the appropriate thing to do is to look at historical aerial photos of the site. The state has provided us with many of those. Look at the USGS map, Mass GIS mapping. We've taken all of those into consideration, and we've shown the perennial stream location, the former location of it, in the most conservative place on the site.
Thank you.
Rebecca, any additional questions?
I would think that the commission, particular to the stream, if not the whole site, would be interested in getting a peer review, and in particular that stream, just because I'm very familiar with, not on the site, but at the rear of the site and upstream of what's shown as the intermittent stream here. It connects into one of our largest conservation areas, and it's quite defined on the conservation area and continues to be along the rear into this property, at least as far as you can see. It does get wooded at some point, but that's my concern, is that this area is not properly defined regarding the stream. I think if the commission moves to have a peer review, it would make sense while they're there to review the full delineation for a confirmation. But my main concern is actually the northeastern portion of the site, where if you look on various maps, including USGS, the intermittent stream does fork in various ways. And my concern is that we're not capturing the a channel that does continue from the culvert to, can everyone see my mouse?
I can.
Okay, from the culvert adjacent to the project area, or parallel to it rather, and then connecting towards the back of the property. And I just want to be clear that on a sensitive site such as this, with the extent of wetland resources, that we fully understand the wetland resource areas on site prior to issuing any order of conditions or any decision, so that the commission is fully aware and fully informed about the property.
If I could just make a comment related to that.
Please.
The intermittent stream channel that is shown on your plan, that was survey located up to the point where it is inaccessible. Even if that were to be deemed to be a perennial stream, the 200-foot riverfront area would not infringe on our project area. So I completely understand the commission's need to understand what's there, but I just want it to be clear that the 200-foot riverfront area would not go up into the area that we're proposing to alter.
I would like to make a comment to my chair that,
Please.
although I do appreciate that what Seth has stated regarding that stream and the fact how it was located and the resource areas offsetting that, even though the riverfront area is not a buffer, I'm still concerned because we've just had a conversation stating that we don't actually know where the channel is, and yet you're telling me it won't impact the area. So again, I respect what you said, and I respect and appreciate all the information you've provided thus far, but I have concern. That's one of the areas I have outstanding concerns with that I don't feel has been addressed, and I feel that the commission has not fully understood that, and they, from my understanding, they're unable to then confirm where it is, and that confirm exactly what you've stated, Seth, that it won't impact the project area, because we don't know that at this time.
Can I ask Rebecca, are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this or have questions?
Yes, we have a raised hand. Would you like, Josh Myler has a question?
Please.
Hi there, Josh Myler, 440 Still River Road in Bolton. I just wanted to second the comments just made that it's very difficult to state that it won't be within 200 feet if you don't know where it currently is. So I would second that request to have it clearly defined if there's still some uncertainty about the location of that perennial or intermittent stream. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for comment?
Again, if you would like to comment, please use the raise hand function or use the chat box. Oh, I have someone who can't raise their hand. Robin Picarello. Brian, can I unmute her?
Yes, please.
Okay. Robin?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry about that. The third will copy that concern. And the other issue I wanted to bring up is you're saying how it may not affect the project area, but how will it affect the surrounding area of the project and where the water runs. So that's what we wanted to express our concerns on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public?
Yes, I have Bob Martell.
Please put him through when you are ready.
This is Bob Martell, 302 Vaughn Hill Road. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment and remind the commission too of some of the information provided During the earlier review process with the ZBA about the 2010 flood conditions and some photographs of the area that were provided at that time, I think they're a useful reference in terms of the water conditions that this property can see, over a period of time.
Were those submitted to ZBA?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
You resubmit them if you still, or did you submit them, Bob?
I believe I submitted some.
If
I would
you
have to-
submitted them to ZBA, if you have a copy of them, I will also speak with Erica, but if you can resubmit that information to the Conservation Commission, since this is a separate hearing process and public meeting process, that would be appreciated.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. And we have Josh Myler again.
Please put him through.
Just a clarifying question, if this isn't the right forum, that's fine. In looking at the plan on my screen, it's hard to see. Can you confirm the amount of fill that's planned to be added in the septic area of the site? It looked like there was a significant embankment being added there. I just couldn't see the difference between the current and the proposed.
If the commission would like, I'd be happy to address that.
I was going to say, Seth, do you know offhand? Right.
Sure. So the existing grade at the highest point in the vicinity of the septic system is elevation 235. The top of the system is approximately elevation 239. The rest of the slope generally follows that until it meets existing grade again. That's a requirement of the state environmental code, Title V. We have to offset the system a certain amount and then provide a certain amount of grading on what's called the breakout slopes on the side of it. So we fully meet that requirement, and that was approved by the Board of Health.
Great. And what, can I ask one more? The 100-year floodplain elevation at that point in that area?
If the commission would like, I'd be happy to address that as well.
Please, Seth.
So that is established by FEMA, and that's at elevation 229 on this site. So substantially lower than the septic system.
All right, thank you.
And while I'm speaking, I feel one of my statements was misunderstood. We were talking about two streams on the site. The intermittent stream on what I call the rear of the site, the eastern portion of the site, was fully survey located. That channel was completely located. The northerly stream is the one that's obscured by flooding. And that was where we went to the standard protocol for something like that and interpreted the location of that. But the eastern one has been 100% established via instrument survey on this site.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else for comment?
Yep. I will find them. Thank you for your patience as I address this. Anastasia.
Hi there. Thank you. I just wanted to say this project is 1,000 times better than what was there before, and I really appreciate everybody that's been working towards making this better for Bolton. I share the concerns, just to reiterate, on the east side of the property with the water on the back side or the east side of the property there. I had submitted some photos of the flooding when it went all the way over Still River Road. And so just to let the commission know, I will resend those to to Rebecca, so that you can just have a visual of some of the water conditions. Thank you.
And we have Robin Picarello had another question.
Hi, this is Joe Picarello, 305 Bond Hill Road. Was there going to be a cold water fisheries survey done also on the property? And then my second question was, or comment was, that the flooding happens periodically between our two properties. And there's definitely a lot of water, and Robin has submitted videos and photos also that she can resubmit again, showing how much water flows through our culvert under their property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I
Any other-
can provide just a quick comment. I will reach out to Mass Wildlife and get an email from them so that I have in writing what they found and where, and a map of exactly where they surveyed. I do know they were out in the area across the street and I believe northeast of the property, but I just need to be sure that they went towards the southeastern portion of the property to confirm that as well. And Keith Silver, I believe, had a question.
Please.
Yes, Keith Silver, 438 Still River Road. There's an awful lot of beaver activity, as been noted prior to this. Is the feeling that that has somewhat stabilized, or if that increases, is it going to exacerbate the situation with the water table there? Is there a plan to, maintain the beaver deceiver if it becomes a problem with raising the water level up to a certain point? I guess I'm just curious, there is a lot of beaver activity there and it can make a huge impact on the water level in the area. What is the plan for that or going forward?
Brian, if I may just touch upon the maintenance of the beaver deceiver. The grate and the beaver deceiver is actually owned by the town of Harbert. That's not to say we could communicate to the applicant a potential assistance for maintaining that area if there are potential implications. However, that I just wanted to clarify that this is the town line here. If you can see my mouse, and the culvert is just over the town line. So Harvard has been out maintaining that with their Department of Public Works. But again, that's not to say that's not relevant. I just wanted to clarify that, and I would hand it back to the chair if they wanted to direct it towards the applicant if regarding beaver activity and potential impacts to the resource area and thus the project area and water table.
I would love to, and I don't know, Seth, if you're able to comment on that or give your thoughts. I do recognize that it is, and like you said, it is across the border in Harvard technically.
No, I'd be happy to comment, Mr. Chairman. So our designs have to be based on accurate existing condition surveys. And part of that, we do extensive soil testing that's witnessed by the Board of Health to determine what's called the estimated seasonal high groundwater table. And when we do those excavations, we don't measure where the actual water is seen. There's certain staining colors in the soil that indicate how high it can come up. And everything is based upon that elevation, which would be historically the highest point. The portions of the site that are being developed are significantly up gradient of the area in question. I believe that, I don't know the elevation of the culvert, but I know it's below our site quite a bit. I don't doubt that that culvert does flood. I believe I've seen the town of Harvard maintain it over the years, but there's no plan incorporating the project to take over the maintenance of that if that's what's being asked.
I think what was being asked possibly was, is there resiliency built into the plan for heightened beaver activity? And I know that that might be a difficult thing to do, but was that considered as part of your plans? If that beaver activity increases or continues, how might it affect the property that you're actually dealing with?
Well, we have a significant area for water to be stored on the property. As I mentioned, our altered area is limited to just over 1 acre, and there's in excess of 5.5 acres. It would take a substantial impoundment to raise the water, a significant amount in that area. And that's important to note for the abutters as well. All stormwater runoff from this site is designed to be essentially contained on the site so that we don't have any increase in runoff to abutting properties. But even if, say, Still River Road were to flood under one of these unprecedented storm events again, it would take a significant volume of water to raise the elevation of the water in the wetland, even an inch in this case. So I hope that addresses the question that was asked.
I think so. All right. Other questions waiting to be asked? Any commission members have any additional thoughts, comments?
I do. I did want to second what Rebecca brought up about the stream, and I know that was brought up last year and was never addressed. And in general, I understand that the layout has been improved to minimize the impacts from the original design. But as somebody who serves on the Conservation Commission and makes it, a priority to stay out of that 100-foot buffer, I'm sitting here looking at a plan where we have 4 single-family homes on a site that is entirely in the 100-foot buffer. And that is a really hard pill to swallow. And I just can't even believe that we're even considering this.
It is fair comment. All right. So basically what I'm hearing, and I looked at this too, I looked at the conditions that ZBA put in place, most of which I agree with. I think there might be some additional conditions that the Conservation Commission itself might want to look at, but nothing, I don't think, too outrageous. But that question of defining that stream and actually getting that reviewed, I know you heard Rebecca bring it up. You've now heard commission members bring it up. And again, I remember that question from the initial project plan. And also it's something that's been pointed out by the neighbors. The people who actually live there and live in the surrounding areas have pointed out to us for years now that should be marked as a perennial stream and not an intermittent stream, that they see it flow year round. They witness it, it's on the back end of their property. We've had a lot of eyewitness accounts for it, that I'd like to get somebody in there specifically to take a look at it and see what it exactly is and where exactly it ends. As Emily was saying, it's a very wet site relatively, and a very important site environmentally that I think we should get those delineations straight and just see what kind of incursions into the buffer zones we're making. Because as she said, like 100% of this project is in areas that we try to avoid, 100% of it. It's painful. So I'd be in favor with other commission members and from what I'm hearing from the public and from our agent of getting a peer review for this site. And it's specifically taking a look at that intermittent stream / perennial stream. Kind of where I stand right now. If possible, I was to say I'll probably poll the commission for the idea of hiring a peer review consultant. I would seem like that's the next logical step for us to take. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that the commission instruct our agent to hire a third-party reviewer for the proposed Still River Commons, Still River Road map and parcel 8.B lots 32 and 33. Bill Payne, do you agree that we should go with a third-party review of this site?
Yes, Brian, I agree.
All right, Emily Winter, do you agree?
Yes.
All right, Rebecca and I also agree as well. So that said, if we're going down that route, would it be okay if we continue this hearing until our next public meeting?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment if I could?
You absolutely can, please.
So Seth's on the call and or at the meeting, and so are my clients. So any of them can interrupt me if I'm off base here with what I'm about to say. So so I understand that the will of the commission is to have a peer review, and I guess I would make a couple of requests. We anticipated that there might be a request to peer review aspect or two of this project. I don't think we have any objection to what you're proposing. We prefer obviously not to do it, but if that's the will of the commission, then so be it. What I would like to avoid, and what I don't think my client is prepared to pay for, is a wholesale second review of what's already been reviewed in 4 separate letters issued over about a 6-month period when we were before the zoning board of appeals. So I would like to think, and I guess I should put this in the form of a question. Will the board, number one, will the commission be attempting to use Horsley Witten Group again so that there's some consistency in terms of not having to reinvent the wheel? And then I guess number two, I would hope that the commission would be providing specific direction on, the stream really being what the focus of the review is, as opposed to, getting another Horsley Witten Group that is taking a second review at my client's expense of what was reviewed in 4 separate letters previously. So that's sort of a question to the commission.
I guess the way I would answer that is, if a doctor told you needed an expensive surgery and you said, I'd like to get a second opinion, I wouldn't go back to the same doctor's office. I mean, I think the opposite, and I can understand what you're saying, but having Horsley Witten rewrite what they've already written, I don't know that helps us as much as having a fresh pair of eyes and getting that second opinion of somebody who may be focused more on wetlands than the general full project. So I'd honestly be recommending that we look for somebody other than Horsley Witten to do it. As far as limiting the scope of work, I'm not sure why. If we're hiring a third-party consultant to go out there and basically look at the wetland delineation and classifications, I would imagine we'd just ask them to look at the whole thing rather than one specific aspect. If they see something that's wrong or that they disagree with, I'd like to hear it. That's just where I come at too. And again, I'm happy to poll the other commission members to see if they want to stick with Horsley Witten or if they'd rather go with somebody else. But I would think you get a second opinion from a different firm.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question because I'm going to sort of defer to my client here, but I appreciate the second opinion analogy. But as someone who primarily represents municipalities and has to provide advice to commissions like yours about peer review and the use of 4453G and requiring an applicant to fund those peer reviews, the very concept of a peer review is that is your second opinion. You're getting advice from a consultant that has been employed by the developer that obviously has a vested interest in approval of the project. So with all due respect to Seth's paycheck is being written by the applicant here. So the town engages a peer review consultant to ensure that what it's being told is accurate. We've been told that once, the town has been told that once by a consultant hired at my client's expense, representing the town's interest in Horsley Witten Group. So I think what the commission's sort of asking for here would not really be a second opinion, but kind of a third opinion here on my client's dime. And if my client's willing to pay for it, then so be it. I mean, that's fine. But I look to Bob, who's on the call at the meeting here, to tell you whether he's willing to fund another review of something that's already been reviewed by the town once.
Well, I'm not sure that we are.
Brian, may I just interject?
Please, yeah.
So I respect everything that you have said, and I completely understand, and I appreciate you re-explaining the chapter 44, section 53G, and the reasoning why that's the case. And I appreciate your experience with municipal boards and committees. But the Horsley Witten, although during the comprehensive permitting process, it was reviewed regarding the wetlands because of the comprehensive permit process and the zoning board of appeals interest in environmental impact, that was not on behalf of the Conservation Commission. Although now the commission is saying during that process, there was information that the commission would have asked further clarification on and would have ensured that their peer review had extensively gone over those areas specific to wetlands and impact to wetland resource areas. That, I think, is the note here, is that the Conservation Commission did not hire that peer review. They did not require that peer review. The comprehensive permitting process through the Zoning Board of Appeals did. And the commission at this time is requesting to carry out the same process through chapter 44 of 53G. That's what I mean by process, to ensure that the commission has proper information and the extent of information they need to make an accurate and well-informed decision. And it sounds like, just from the feedback we've gotten thus far this evening, that they don't feel they can make a proper informed decision without that. And I just want to highlight that although I do appreciate the extensive amount of work that's gone into this already, the commission still needs more information and to be ensured that this is what is on the site. This is how it may or may not be impacting or adversely impacting the resource areas and the interests protected under the Act. That was also reviewed from the local bylaw, not the Wetlands Protection Act, from my understanding. And the commission has a right to have a peer review look at the project in that light. And I believe they're fully capable of requesting that. And I'll hand it back to the chair at that point.
May I add this? Okay, Brian.
Please, Mr. Pace, go ahead.
We also hired Ecotech. So this isn't the third review. This is the fourth review. Okay. You know, we've had Horsley Witten, we've had Seth, we've had Ecotech, you know, all saying the same thing.
Yep.
You know, this is not a surprise. Okay, but you know, this is, we entered an agreement with the town. We've downsized the project. Okay, we've moved a lot here. Okay, I think if you want, okay, another review, okay, I don't see why, A, okay, you're gonna have to limit the scope to something, okay, that we agreed upon, or B, okay, perhaps you guys want to pay for it for a change.
Nice of you to say. Where do I start with this? Look, as was pointed out originally at the beginning of this hearing, by going the 40B route, you get to put everything in front of ZBA. You basically get to look past a lot of our Bolton wetland bylaws. The same Bolton wetland bylaws that myself and every other private citizen of this town has to live by when they do projects. You get to throw those out the window and skip us by going the 40B route. But as stated at the beginning, you know, you can't get by the Wetland Protection Act in those areas of it. So you're forced to come back to us. I'm sorry that we're requesting our own peer review of it. If the conversation wasn't clear, there are a lot of questions as to, is that an intermittent stream? Is that a perennial stream? Where does it go? Where does it end? Was that looked at specifically? You know, you get a lot of benefits by going the 40B route. You know, unfortunately, you have to come see us, and we're well within our rights to ask for a peer review. And again, this is something that the neighbors are talking about. They've let us know these are people that are citizens of the town that actually live there. After you build these and leave, you're gone. You move to wherever. They still live next door to this. So if they're not happy with basically the reviews that have been done and the condition of that intermittent stream / perennial stream has been left in, then neither am I. I think we're well within our rights, as you were well within your rights to ignore our bylaws by going 40B. So it doesn't really move me. I'm gonna request that. Well, I can't speak for the commission, but for me personally, I'm still planning to request that third-party review. I'd like it to be done by somebody other than Horsley Witten. And
Just call it a fourth
that's
party
the way
review.
I'll be voting.
Just call it
and
a fourth
go
party
ahead,
review.
please.
Then call it what it is, a fourth party review. I mean, it's
What?
not a third party review.
It's called a third-party review.
Yeah, okay, well, when four parties review it, then it's a four party review.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I don't want to
Would
argue.
Brian Falk like
No,
to
I don't either.
interject on
Is
this?
that a legal term? Is that a technical term? I mean, trying to put out there officially what we're doing. And I think we're officially doing a third-party review. I don't know what the definition of a fourth-party review is. I understand that you're
four parties
upset
have
by
reviewed
this. More people are upset by you going by our wetland bylaws and just getting around those. More people are upset by that than you are upset by this. I'm
A
really
lot of
sorry. I
people
don't know
are
what to
upset
tell you.
about not-
I think we're well within our rights, and I think it's called a third-party review, and that's what we're requesting.
Mr. Chair, would you like our council to just weigh in on the peer review process?
I think, are we gonna learn anything new? I mean, I'm happy to hear, but I believe we're well within our rights to ask for it. And specifically, we have one specific item on the topography that there are questions about, and the neighbors have questions about, and we have questions about, and it's never really been answered. I think we're well within our rights, and I'm curious to hear what council has to say. I just don't need to drag this out any longer.
You just
That's
said
where
one,
we're gonna
one
go.
specific question.
If I may interject, that question is actually addressed in the notice of intent package. As Rebecca mentioned, there are stream stats. They're taken at the most conservative location on the stream in question. So that information is in the package. I feel we've gone a little bit off track here. The applicant entered into the original permitting process with a order of conditions that was approved by this very commission. And based on requests by the commission and the town's peer review, they chose to take another look at the wetlands, hire their own outside consultant to do that. And truthfully, the results were not what the applicant wanted. We moved flags closer to the development area, and we've adjusted the project in accordance. So I appreciate the commission's stance, but I think it needs to be understood that there was a lot of history behind this and a lot of consideration that went into this. If there's one question they have, we're happy to address that.
Okay. Me speaking specifically just for me, I don't have one question that can be answered without an actual third-party review going in and letting me know what's going on with that stream. And again, that's just me. If there's a specific vote you're looking for us to take, I'm happy to call that vote. But right now, I'm probably just going to call a roll to see if we recommend third-party review and then ask to continue this meeting until our next public meeting. But if there's something, a vote specifically you would like me to advance to the commission and have us vote on, please let me know. I will put it forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So I agree with something that you said a moment ago, that you're fully within your rights to seek a third-party review, and you're fully within your rights to determine the scope of that third-party review. And I know you've got counsel on the call tonight as well, and so he can confirm that for you. I think the flip side of that is that an applicant is fully within its rights to not fund that review. You can determine that a review is necessary. The applicant can refuse to fund the review. I'm not saying that's what the applicant's doing here. I don't know the answer to that question. Bob and Dave are both on the call. They can answer it for you. But I just want to be clear that yes, you can take that vote now and you can vote to continue the hearing. I can't commit to you without my clients committing to you during the meeting tonight that they're willing to pay for another third-party review without restriction, without limitation, at substantial cost, I imagine, of a project that's already been reviewed a couple of times, to Bob's point. So that's the only point that I want to make.
I appreciate that as well. There is an appeal process if the applicant does not agree with the requirement. If the commission wishes to require this evening the peer review, and that's well within the right to go through that process if the commission votes there.
All right. Any other comments or questions right now from members of the commission?
Not I, Brian.
All right. Any other members of the public looking to comment on this right now?
Just as a reminder, you can use your raise hand function or the chat function, and then once you are called on, I will unmute you.
Can I ask a question? When Bob had mentioned that per directive, was this from the ZBA that directed going down to 4 units? I'm just trying to understand where that direction came from. It did not come from the Conservation Commission.
It was through the comprehensive permit process.
Okay, so I'm just going back to my original point. We have reviewed projects in the past for single family homes on properties. We have encouraged developers and property owners to minimize the footprint or to rework the layout to get out of the 100-foot buffer. And I'm looking at this plan and we are just outside of the 25-foot buffer with 4 single family homes. And if we have spent years working to get houses out of the 100-foot buffer, and we're sitting here and looking at this plan. I mean, I understand that it was gone, you know, reduced from an 8-unit development to 4, but that still just doesn't do it for me. And I would like to see a third-party review of the stream. I agree wholeheartedly on that, but that still does not get me out of this whole issue of being completely within the 100-foot buffer with 4 homes, a septic that basically takes the grade up 5 feet over the whole area of the septic and the driveway. Everything is inside the 100-foot buffer. And that's going to be an issue for me today on. And I don't even understand how I get past that from a regulation standpoint.
I have similar problems. Other comments right now? All right,
We do have one from Bob Martell.
please, Bob.
Yes, hi, it's Bob Martell, 302 Von Hill Road. I just wanted to echo and say I 100% agree with the comments that Brian and Emily just made to support that from a town resident perspective. And I also think it's important, I don't know how this gets integrated into the process, but, you know, as I mentioned, I have some photographs from high water times that I can share with the Conservation Commission. Other people have mentioned they have videos, et cetera. I don't know if these are things that Horsley Witten or Ecotech or anyone has seen. It's one thing to do a paper study. It's another thing to look at actual real life evidence of conditions that have happened. And I know some of those things were submitted to the ZBA. I don't know if during that review process, those things got shared with the peer reviews and people doing peer reviews, but I think it's somehow important to integrate that into this review process because it's real evidence of real conditions. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. We look forward to seeing those. All
Mr.
right,
Chairman,
please.
I'll be brief, but I'd like just to maybe take an opportunity to address the concerns that Ms. Winter raised and that you sort of echoed relative to the placement of the buildings. And I obviously can't say anything to contradict the statements you've made about where the buildings are located and where those locations are as compared to the wetland resource areas and the various buffers or setbacks. What I can say, and it's why I sort of prefaced my remarks by describing the process that's been followed thus far and the reference to Chapter 40B and the jurisdiction that the Zoning Board of Appeals has and how that affects the jurisdiction that your commission has. We're before you under the State Act, and so we've got to satisfy the performance standards of the State Act. You have a local bylaw. Your local bylaw is more stringent than the State Act, as many local bylaws are. And that local bylaw falls in the hands of the Zoning Board of Appeals under Chapter 40B. And so we had the ability to, and we did, seek certain waivers from the requisite setbacks, the requisite buffers, and the ability to do work or not do work within those buffers that exists under your current bylaws. And we obtained through, in the first instance, through settlement negotiations, and then ultimately through a comprehensive permit, we obtained those waivers. So again, I can't sway you as a matter of principle when you look at this plan to vote for it. What I can tell you is that legally, with respect to where these buildings are located as they relate to the wetland resource areas and as they relate to the buffers, we already have the permissions we need to place the buildings there, not just from a zoning standpoint, but from a wetland standpoint, because those waivers, for better or for worse, were taken out of the hands of the Conservation Commission and placed into the hands of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the board has granted those waivers. So that's why the buildings are where they are, in part because it's how this site gets developed. A site that might not be developable in this manner wouldn't be developable in this manner absent 40B, but because we also received those waivers already. So I just want to offer that clarification because I think it's an important one. You know, legally, I understand that practically speaking, on principle, maybe it makes no difference, but legally speaking, we have the permissions to place the buildings here, both as a matter of zoning law and as a matter of wetlands law.
Right. I'm not arguing that. And legally speaking, we have the right to request a third-party review. You know, environmentally, putting stuff in the buffer zone, it's horrible. It's absolutely an affront to the health and safety of me and my family. I know people don't have to discuss climate change when they're actually giving these permits out, but I agree with Emily. We're doing everything we can to possibly save our wetlands. And this project just laughs at it. It just laughs at the people of Bolton, like, we're going to stick it right in the middle of it. Who cares? I care. And I'd like to see everything defined around the edges. So I appreciate you giving me 10 minutes on legally we can do this. I knew that. Legally, we can request a peer review. And I'd like to make a motion that the Bolton Conservation Commission requests a peer review, a third-party peer review of the proposed Still River Commons construction of forcible dwellings, access driveways, and supporting infrastructure comprehensive permit. Map and parcel 8.B lots 32 and 33, formerly 8.B-32.
Brian, I don't know if it was the case for everyone, but you cut out as you were making that motion, unfortunately. But I would also, if you would like to also have our council provide any guidance on that motion, just to ensure that it is encompassing everything that's needed in terms of the peer review.
I would prefer to say things correctly rather than incorrectly. So yes, no, I will take any advice or counsel I could get on the best way to put that out there.
Sure. Brian Falk from Myrick O'Connell Town Council. I think the motion can be as simple as authorize a peer review of the notice of intent application. It doesn't have to be more specific than that. I assume Rebecca knows what the board or the commission means when they're looking for a peer review of the notice of intent application. So she can take it from there.
Okay. So that said, hopefully without cutting out, I'd like to make a motion that the Conservation Commission authorizes a peer review of the project at Still River Road, map and parcel 8.B, lots 32 and 33, formerly 8.B-32. All those in favor, starting with Bill Payne.
Aye.
Emily Winter.
Aye.
All right, and I'm an aye as well, Rebecca.
Noted, thank you.
So that said, asking the applicants, is it okay if we continue this hearing until our next public meeting, which is going to be January 5th?
I'm going to look to you, Dave and Bob. Do you have any objection to a continuance to January 5th?
January 5th, sure.
Okay. Rebecca, 8:15, our next opening?
Yes.
All right. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for notice of intent for Still River Road, map and parcel 8.B, lots 32 and 33, formerly 8.B-32, till our next public hearing, Tuesday, January 5th, 2021 at 8:15 p.m. Do I hear a second on that?
Also.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Bill Payne.
Aye.
Emily Winter.
Brian, I don't know that you got a second. It was one of the attendees talking. I apologize.
Perfectly fine. Let's try that again. Can we get a second on that motion?
Aye, Bill.
Thanks.
All those in favor, starting with Bill.
Aye.
Emily.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, Rebecca.
Great. If the applicant or the representative could please send me an email in writing requesting the public hearing be continued until January 5th, 2020 at 8:15 p.m. as will be memorialized in the minutes for this meeting, I would greatly appreciate it for the record. Can someone from your team just confirm that?
Yes, we will do that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. Next up this evening, Rebecca, are you ready to proceed? Thank you. So we have a request for a release of funds for Houghton Farm Lane based off a certificate of compliance that has been issued. Rebecca, can you update us on this?
Yes, we had issued a certificate of compliance for DEP number 1120561 on October 1st, 2020 for the Houghton Farm Lane and subdivision, which also included some remediation area, a crossing, and then the associated restricted area and open space. They have recorded, they being the developer, has recorded the certificate of compliance at book 63735, page 262. And at this time, they are requesting, as is customary when a COC is issued, for the release of the remaining funds which were being held, so that in the event it wasn't done in compliance, those funds are held so that the commission is able to complete the project.
Okay. And you see no reason why we should not release the funds?
No.
And neither do I. Any commission members have any strong feelings why we should not release the funds?
No.
All right. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we vote via roll call to release the funds to Houghton Farm Lane after they have received their certificate of compliance. All those in favor, starting with Bill Payne?
Aye.
Emily Winter?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, Rebecca.
Wonderful, thank you.
Did people have a chance to look at our December 1st meeting minutes? And if so, did they have any questions, issues, problems, typos?
No.
I did not either. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we approve our December 1st, 2020 meeting minutes as drafted and submitted at this evening's meeting. Do I hear a second for that?
Second. Ah,
Second and a third. All those in favor, starting with Bill Payne,
Aye.
Emily Winter,
aye.
and I'm an aye as well, Rebecca.
Great, thank you. The only updates I have are that our volunteer land steward position is still open and we're still accepting applications. We did get a lot of storm damage from a past storm, and I assume we'll get some this week as well. I was able to remove some blockages along the trail, along with our Trails Committee members have been out to do the same. I have also hung up the signs as requested and discussed with public safety last year due to an individual falling through the ice. That just reminds people it's danger. There is, please stay off the ice for safety reasons. So that has been implemented before the storm, which is great as well. That's it at this time, I believe, for
All right.
updates.
No, not too bad on time. Does anybody have anything else to add? Any new business? No. All right. Rebecca, anything we are forgetting? Probably lots of things, but anything that we should be dealing with this evening that we have not brought up or thought about?
Nope.
All right. In that case, I would like to make a motion that we hereby adjourn the December 15th, 2020 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. Do I have a second on that one?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with William Payne,
Aye.
Emily Winter,
Aye.
and I'm an aye myself. Rebecca, thank you as always for all of your hard work, and we will see you all next time.
All right.
Night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Take care.
Thank you, Brian.
Got it. Good night.
Night.